I think I've got just under 10 minutes. The last time we had this presentation, it was with the University of Pretoria, with Comrade Stevens, I think he's here. And it took us the whole day to go through it. So I'm going to squash that whole day into less than 10 minutes. And I hope I'm able to do that successfully as well. So thank you so much. I was given a brief to speak on behalf of Farmers Connect Africa. Farmers Connect Africa is an agri-umbrella body for economic development. Our vision as Farmers Connect Africa is that of making agriculture a backbone of Africa's economies. Our mission is that of becoming an agribusiness development agency of choice for the African continent. In a nutshell, just a few pointers. Like I've said, that we are an agri-umbrella organization for economic development. We are truly a Pan-African organization headquartered in South Africa with regional offices in Kenya, in Nigeria, in DRC, in Egypt, as well as South Africa. So each is servicing the particular region, of course. We have operations running across 21 of the African countries with over 20,000 verified small-scale farmers. Our membership categories, in the main, you've got players in the agronomy space. Those of you who are into agriculture would appreciate that those are your tobacco producers, your sugar producers, your dried greens, your grains, your forestry, your canes, and so forth. Then you've got a category that talks to horticulture. In that space, you'll find your grape producers, your raisins, your bananas, your garlic nurseries, your tomatoes, and. Then the last category in the main would be your meat producers or your meat production folks. Those will be your pork producers, your red meat producers, your milk producers, your poultry farming, and the list carries on. And I want to try and speak to our mandate in 9 points. And hopefully I'll be able to do that within the next 7 minutes. Firstly is that we are an umbrella body for agricultural economic development. We facilitate comprehensive capacity building interventions tailored to the specific developmental needs of agricultural practitioners and corporate members in the agri-value chain. I've been listening to all the speakers throughout the course of the day, and I picked up that capacity building is such a critical strategic resource. So in the agri space, we have partnered with quite a number of very capacitated organizations to be able to do just that. We facilitate access to agri-input resources for small-scale agricultural practitioners, and I think it goes without saying that these are most needed inputs. We facilitate agricultural value chain to allow farmers to access your agro-processing industries. And of course, we also deal quite a lot with issues of access to global markets. Because it's one thing to be able to produce, and it's the other to be able to have access into that space. So I think in short, colleagues, we transition subsistence farmers to commercial farmers in order to achieve agricultural development and integration into the value chain. One of the things that kept coming up throughout the course of the day was the issues of quality. We develop agricultural product standards and quality authority because it's one thing to be able to produce and it's the other to start talking quality. What is quality? What color is it? How does it look like? And. So we're quite involved in terms of establishing what will otherwise be industry quality standards and lastly, we are about building a consolidated continental relationship management framework for the agricultural sector to advance economic development. I think I've got 1 minute left, so I'm timing myself very clearly. What I'm going to be able to do, our esteemed program director, is to share this presentation. It's quite detailed through the program director, through the chairperson, is to share with the podium so that if there are further engagements, we are then able to engage and to facilitate. Our website is up and running, and I definitely am looking forward to engaging with the podium further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ramahaneza. Our next speaker is Lerato Maku, but as you know, we are supposed to finish at 1, so she made a commitment to sit in a meeting at 1. So we will have later, which means we are now going to go into our next speaker, Sonabile Ndamase. He is renowned as the creator of the Madiba shirt. He runs a company called Bukani Fashions. And he's not just a fashion designer, he also imparts skills to many young graduates, introducing them into the world of fashion. And just a few weeks ago, he conquered the fashion capitals of the world, Milan and France, showcasing his designs. And I'm saying this thing because I had an interview with him 3 weeks ago, so I was just abusing my position as someone who has just staged a coup from Continental. So now that it's back, I'll hand over to Dr.
No, you've done an excellent job, Prasol. So, I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Without any waste of time, I mean, I think the intro that you have shared with the colleagues suffices to give him an opportunity to give us his insights on how the fashion industry, amongst other variables, can contribute towards enhancement of the trade. Please proceed, sir.
The last time I remember, it was the chair.
The hot chair. No, in fact, my chief, you look nicer on camera here.
You can say chair and acting chair. Well, because I'm a disciplined.
That word has been abused so many times.
I could move anywhere where I'm sent. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. In this case, it's always a pleasure for me actually having to be in a situation and also among the intellectuals, and especially that I happen to be the last but not least speaker. I was expecting that I'm one of those people that dresses people. So now the makeup has worn down. So I'm not quite sure what kind of a look and feel that we are going to have, because I'm coming towards the end. But neither to say, in this particular space that I've been given an opportunity to speak on, my name has already been alluded on. The name is Sonabile Ndamase, and I'm very much involved in the space of creating an opportunity as well for the young and upcoming designers, and making it a point that whatever knowledge that I've received over the years, then I can pass it over to those that are still coming out of the institutions of learning. And also I have, as I was sitting here listening to quite a number of other eloquent speakers, I felt that they were absolutely speaking on terms of the areas that we have been having what we call bottleneck for our products, as terms of letting them into the international market, and also exposing those kind of products without being actually stolen by the international market, including actually our neighboring people that we are involved with. What then I'm putting across is a scenario where Brasol, which he mentioned when you use the wine as his exemplary, that also affect us in the fashion industry, which is the same thing that we do see happening most of the time, is that you come up with a creative idea, but if ever then that particular idea is not patent, and we find it too difficult for ourselves. Even now, recently, like he has mentioned that I went abroad, but we always have a challenge that you showcase in these international markets as an African person, and you have so many people with different cameras on the stage. And because actually we are not protected by our own country and also by our own other neighboring African states, because we converge in those particular fashion weeks and showcasing in terms of trying to brand ourselves. The only thing that happened is that when you come back home, even if ever you were there for any particular mission, you come back home, you find that the market, your own market is not ready for your products. Once your market is not ready for your own product, and as much as you have paid a lot of money, and you find that the department, which is the Department of Trade and Industry, I'm not quite sure with our other African states, what is it that they do have in place for themselves. Your designs, the moment you move out of the international market, there is no way that you can stop them from being stolen by the international market. And there is, because we've got no, because sometimes we go to this international market for excitement. Just because I'm going to, for the first time in this particular market, I'm going to showcase. And then what happened thereafter? Because your product, first and foremost, you did not put your value chain into place. What has that happened? I'm not quite sure in other sectors. You will find that you come back home, and with that, I'm not trying to complain, but I'm just only saying, as much as it is when you put your product, even when you put your product actually on these social media, there is absolutely no way that when somebody else decides to utilize your product and copy it and use you as a muse. The international world has done that very good in using Africa as a muse. Whenever then you find that, as he has alluded, that the product, because it's more reasonable for us here in our country, even in any other African states. I've traveled most of our neighboring African states. You will also find that when you brand yourself into those particular platforms, regardless of, even now today, people still asking me, did I ever in my own space manage to patent the Mandela shirts, so to speak? But there is no way that you can take the name of a person and brand it into your own self. You understand? And that has also been an issue. And also to maintain that aspect of lawyers and so forth, when you have branded, even then, I mean, so many of international brands as well, you find them being sold in the streets. You can go to areas like what they call now today Chinatown. how many of our brands that you find them there, whether they mimic them or they've done anything on those particular brands. Now today, our own indigenous African style, you don't find it from within our own so-called South Africans manufacturing. Much of those particular products, they are manufactured by foreigners. Now, the question is, again, back to you, Brasol, that how do we brand ourselves and isolate ourselves in this red tape that is happening around and making ourselves more visible? Now today, even myself, there is a brand which I'm saying, the Madiba shirts, or now it's being branded as presidential shirts. And I'm the only one who have dressed most of the president of this particular country and even foreign presidents. But I should be the one who says presidential shirts, but now you find them all over the show. And also the people that have got the money to do all those things are people of different origin, not us as African people. How much that we can invest into our African soil, in our own people, that is a question as well, so that when we brand this product, therefore, they have got the face as well. Because sometimes we brand products and then they do not have any face. Because somebody else is the one who's behind, who's selling this particular product on yourself. I should think then this is a scenario, like I so say, which have made our company to survive to a particular degree, because we were involved in this particular space since 1985. That's how much I've been involved in this, so you can guess my age. I might not look my age because of the makeup that I'm So on that note, I am also putting it before the international world, which is our African diaspora, and also among ourselves as we are around here. What can we do in assisting and helping, especially our textile industry that is dying on a day-to-day basis? It's worse now that in the country that we are living, which is known as South Africa, that as we speak, most of the factories now have closed down because of electricity. There's load shedding that is taking place. Even institutions of learning, that is the clothing and textile, they can't operate. Because one moment you are sitting on your machine, one moment the lights are off, and how do we service our clients? And how do we then start to get into the market that is vulnerable on its own, because our industry is a cutthroat industry. It's a dog, it's dog, not pit bulls this time. It is a very challenging industry. And with that, I'm trying to put before this forum and also to the other people that are listening to this kind of presentation, that we need then to find a way of how we as African people, we can start coming together and just only come with the products that we know are of our own. While some of us, we have used other people, well, in this case, I will use myself, like I also say, I've used certain politicians, certain people to become my ambassador for my own products. But what happened to that other child, to that little one that is studying the fashion design, who does not have any body? But now we are having also a new emerging area where we talk of influencers. And when you look at also these kind of influencers, they don't have money to pay these designers. Now we're still putting the designer at the end of the market, as much as these influencers, they're addressing your product, but at the end of the day, they don't mention you. Little of that they say, they will tell you that I've bought this thing, whether in China, when I was in Dubai, whatever country that it was. Now, how do we then change the market thinking along that in helping the textile? Because now also, just only to close down, we have a scenario that is coming up where you find that fabrics as well that we have in our own country, the producers of those particular genuine fabrics are no more in the country now. And they are also taken by international people without mentioning their countries. They have come in and absorbed and take over. Now what's going to happen to us as African people who are indigenous of these particular designs and this particular fabric? Again, it's going to go back to what Brasol was mentioning, that it will come from another country, made in that particular country for us as African, and also because we can identify with those colors of the fabrics, we can identify with those styles and geometrics that we see on those particular fabric, we will jump and go and buy. But you find that at the end of the day, it was not produced from our country. They've stolen all those ideas for the international market and brought it back to us, and we become the consumers once again. On that note, I pause.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nobile, for interesting insight, which has given this collective food for thought. You have really triggered thought-provoking issues which can only be mulled over time, particularly from a risk mitigation point of view. I've picked up, issues around cultural expropriation, if you like, which is quite vast, and it is happening on a day-to-day basis. But again, it ties well with the conversation or issues raised by Ellen Mukoki, that South Africa's growth is very much intertwined with the continent. It is important that as part of resolving issues around intellectual property, amongst others, or patents, we need to see how Africa has evolved, which countries has leapfrogged that particular challenge, so that we can learn from those countries, so that we're able to address this notion of cultural expropriation better. I don't want to take too much time. I want to bring in here our lady from our ambassador, Pumela. She is the brand, she's the country head in the UK for South African. She has been asked to run an item on how the trade mission from where she sits in London could be, what sort of narrative is prevailing there, and how do we leapfrog this kind of conversation moving forward. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to excellencies and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Pumela Salela, and I'm the UK country head for Brand South Africa. Brand South Africa seeks to position South Africa as a globally competitive nation. So we treat the country as a brand, and we promote it internationally in the international markets. So we are in the business of country branding or nation branding. And we do this by also carrying the African flag very high, because we believe in Africa's regional integration. We do not believe that South Africa is an island of its own. So when we go to the market, we also push the Africa agenda. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and Agreement excites us, because we can now speak with one voice within the continent of Africa, and also we can speak with one voice as Africa in international markets as we go there. And so how do we promote South Africa in the United Kingdom? Through this entity called Brand South Africa. What we do is that we take one sector of the economy at a time and showcase it to the international market, particularly in the United Kingdom. So we showcase South Africa's offering in all the sectors of the economy, and we encourage investors to invest in South Africa. We also encourage collaboration at all levels, in all the sectors. I'm sitting here next to a gentleman who's in the education sector. We do work with universities. We focus on different stakeholders. We focus on the government of the United Kingdom. We focus on civil society. There's a lot of NGO sector work in the United Kingdom, where there are NGOs who are, assisting South Africans at various levels. And we also work with the business sector. So we have engagements with the various business formations and business entities in the United Kingdom, showcasing to them the opportunities, particularly the investment opportunities within South Africa. There is also a long history between the United Kingdom and South Africa, dating back to the anti-apartheid years. So we also have a sector of the British population, which we call Friends of South Africa. These are people who have supported South Africa in the past and wish to continue to support South Africa and its development into the future. So we also work with these Friends of South Africa, who are mainly British citizens. My area of remit is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And so these are the areas in which we engage. There is also a number of young South Africans who are in the United Kingdom on scholarships. I myself was a recipient of a Nelson Mandela scholarship some years ago and studied in the United Kingdom through having been awarded the scholarship by Utatu Nelson Mandela. And we have a lot of these young people which we treat as brand ambassadors, because they are carrying the South African flag in the institutions that they are in. We also have a formal program that we call the Global South Africans program. This is where we identify South Africans who have already left South Africa and are based in the United Kingdom, and we encourage them to assist us in the work that we're doing, so that they are able to also showcase South Africa's offering. We acknowledge that they've left South Africa, but what we always tell them is that once a South African, always a South African. So you can leave the country, but you cannot take the country out of you. So we are mainly involved, Chairperson, through what we can call soft power for South Africa. So we find any area of intervention where we can be able to either seek partnerships or investments for South Africa. We are also responsible for the reputation management of South Africa in the market. What I can say, because you were asking what the environment is like, in the market, what I can say is that there are a lot of British citizens who are invested in South Africa through mainly businesses and different sectors of the economy. And what we see in the market is that they want South Africa to work. So they are actually sharing the vision for South Africa with us, because they also have investments that they wish to protect within the country. So I can say that South Africa is really one of those countries that are well received in the United Kingdom, and also having been evidenced by the fact that the first official state visit invitation from the United Kingdom by the new king who was coronated was extended to the president of South Africa. And there were a lot of activities that were happening. We were on the ground. There were business forums. There were different engagements which really show that there is a liking and an appetite for South Africa within the United Kingdom. And I can take any questions if you have, whilst we have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Well, we have a minute or two. If there are any burning issues or issues that you want to ask her, she's here. She's more than welcome to take those questions. Now or after we have concluded. Either way, that flies. Once again, thank you very much, Pamela. One thing I just want to pick up from the last point you mentioned is how South Africa has been perceived in the UK from a media point of view, and the trade mission. We seem to fail to leverage on the role of media, on how media can position the trade missions. That's something that is quite, because media shapes the narratives. And all these activities, I mean, Sol and I, we had this on the time about the media houses in the continent, the extent to which we do not have media houses that are controlled and owned by Africans, which inherently means that he who pays the piper determines the tunes. So it is impossible for Africa to migrate exponentially if we are not able to invest in those strategic institutions. So maybe from a UK point of view, because the fact that the president was invited gave us a huge publicity. Imagine if you have those kind of publicity on this kind of initiative, because the biggest issue is promoting advocacy. The more people know about the trade, and the more people know about that, the equality of this world, tsunamis of this world, the quicker, because those stories can be sung or advocated from our end to reposition Africa, because we have to feed into the continent our own messaging, our own positive stories, which nobody will ever advocate for. So there lies in the role of media in strategically positioning the continent with all its flaws, but a lot of good stories, which we need to leverage on, because we don't have those particular strategic platforms. We've been marginalized. I just want to piggyback on that. All right. If you allow me to praise the colleagues, we've got Lerato Maku. Is she still available?
No. That's why I decided to hijack her into the program. Remember, we were meant to finish at 1, so Lerato committed to having a meeting at 1. Then I said she can go to a meeting in one of the rooms, she'll come back. So whilst we are waiting for her, then we hijacked Pamela. Anyone representing us, Lerato, of Labo Ones? Not here, okay. So in that instance, it means I'm going to come in to speak on giving historical context to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Basically, giving a context to what Caesar, Dr. Manias for and Mr. Kasbek Nove have said. In fact, I've never prayed this much in my entire life. I've been praying that, please let Labo Wines come and Lerato come back so that I don't have to speak. But at least I made some points that I will focus on, because we are just running away time for Lerato. If I finish, she's not here. Masingita is not going to give the vote of thanks. She will talk about above normal, her brand, and then Stevens Mokhalapa will give the vote of thanks. Stevens is the CEO of Brandhill Africa Institute. Okay. So you'll forgive me, and you are also program director. You have the authority to say stop, then I'll stop, because I'm just going to speak and prepare. Okay. 1884, 1885, there's the Berlin Conference. European powers decide to meet and to dissect Africa into this many pieces we call countries, and they share them amongst themselves. The African countries become colonies. Then 1899, Joseph Conrad writes a book called The Heart of Darkness, basically saying Africa is a dark continent. This goes against the spirit of what Pliny the Elder said during the term of the very first century. He said, "Ex Africa semper aliquid novi," which means out of Africa something refreshingly new always comes up. This is what he said. But over 2,000 years later, they come back. Joseph Conrad says Africa is a dark continent. Then 1905, Pixley Kaisaka Semi, a student from South Africa at Cambridge University, gives his graduation speech titled "The Regeneration of Africa" in response to colonialism, which has dissected Africa into the 55 countries. And he said Africa needs to, in response to colonialism, Africa needs to unite and to launch an integrated, concerted effort against colonialism across the continent. Then 1912, in South Africa, leaders from a number of Southern Africa, our traditional chiefs, our intellectuals, they converge in Mangaung. They established what was then called South African Native National Congress, which in 1926 became renamed the African National Congress. Now there's a spirit of Pan-Africanism emerging across the continent, but it wasn't that powerful, because then you also had the emergence of socialist communist voices through the International Socialist League, which was mainly constituted by the Jews from Germany and other European cities as they became laborers. Remember, by then African communities resisted proletarianization to become workers. But 2019 also, remember, there was Clement Kadalia who established the first trade union separate from the International Socialist League, called International Industrial and Commercial Workers Union. Now, then in 1936, Josiah Gumede, the president of the ANC, goes to attend the Communist International in China. He's excited in Russia. He's excited in Comintern about communism. He comes back. He speaks about communism. But the problem is that the communists in the Soviet Union have taken power from traditional leaders, USSR. Then our ANC constituency becomes uncomfortable. But also do remember that Communist International took a resolution that, in fact, this is the origin of the two-phase approach that ultimately the Communist Party in South Africa adopted. That first is national liberation. After national liberation is then that we can talk about socialist revolution. But then, 1939, the Youth League comes up for Mandela. Oh, she's back, but already I'm here. The Youth League then comes, and then they talk about the African Charter document. It speaks to Pan-Africanism to a large extent. And then, but there was a lull. Then in 1956, after Morocco became independent from France, then it invited a number of African leaders, including Kwame Nkrumah, to Casablanca, and they established what they call the Casablanca Group. That basically said that they needed to collaborate with national liberation movements in other African countries so that they could resist colonialism. Yes, 56 up until the early 60s, Morocco was very progressive. And then 1963, on the 24th of May, African leaders converged in Ethiopia, and Kwame Nkrumah spoke about the unification of Africa. And the next day, on the 25th of May, the Organization for African Unity was established. Then it established a platform for that structured, coordinated effort to resist colonialism. Yes, even our national liberation movements from South Africa were represented in that meeting. But then Africa then began to suffer from neo-colonialism. As many African countries were liberated, and progressive anti-colonial voices were silenced. You have Patrice Lumumba in the DRC, killed and overthrown by Mobutu Sese Seko. Basically, the West then invested sufficient resources, especially France, into resisting the winds of change that were sweeping across the entire continent. So it was that. Then in South Africa, then we had the Black Consciousness movement in the 70s, but then fast track to 1996 at the adoption of our constitution. The then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki spoke about African Renaissance. He said, "I'm an African." So he brought back that spirit of Pan-Africanism, that we should all be committed to it. In fact, in Parliament, he said, "I'm an African." 2 weeks later, there was an event in Pretoria. That was when he came up with this construct of African Renaissance. Then fast track to 2002, then the former president is now the president of South Africa. He's chairing the Organization for African Unity in Durban. He rebrands it as the African Union, which it is up until today. But now, in 1980, these African countries got together in Nigeria, and they adopted what they call the Abuja Minute, because they met in Abuja, and they spoke about what Kwame Nkrumah spoke about in 1963. They said we need to formally engage in structured mechanism to integrate Africa. Then he spoke about a continental currency. He spoke about Africa being, Kwame Nkrumah spoke about Africa being a common market. Then they said, yes, we are going to integrate into one common market. So that was in 1980. And now, up until today, yes, we have done very well from 1980 as Africa to integrate into a common market, because our original integration day was supposed to be July 4, 2020, but due to COVID, then it was rescheduled to 1 January 2021, meaning that we have taken 40 years to integrate ourselves into a common market. Whereas if you look at Europe, they took 72 years to establish the European Union into what it is. And like the other speaker said, we are the world's largest common market in terms of 55 African countries participating in it, and we have a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion US. The 0.2 was the impact of COVID that reduced us from 3.6 trillion US. You have a combined market of 1.26 billion consumers across the continent. Now, as we speak today, 44 African countries have ratified the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. 9 have signed it, they still have to ratify it. By ratification, it means they've submitted the instruments or modalities for the operationalization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. and the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement Secretariat has already published the tariff book, and Busisa spoke about the 7 countries that are already implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement as pilot, and basically we are now on the second phase of negotiations. The first phase involved removing up to 90% of our tariffs on goods and services across the continent to boost intra-African trade. From the AU Heads of State and Government Assembly during the first week of February this year, the Secretariat indicated that we are already on 87.7% against the target of 90. The 2.3% relates to your sector, textile and clothing, and the other one relates to automotive. The automotive is a tricky one because South Africa is assembling BMW, Mercedes-Benz, all these foreign brands. Now, does assembling qualify as made in Africa? Then they are now discussing the question of localization. To what percentage of localization will qualify them as made in South Africa? So it's going very well. Last week, Dr. Mane Asfo and Putsisa spoke about this, the Africa Industrialization Index, that says that in fact from 2010 to 2011, many African countries, in fact 39 African countries have done well in terms of industrializing themselves. And guess what? Amongst the top 6, it's not Nigeria, it's Eswatini. So South Africans should take Eswatini very seriously because it's amongst the top 6 countries that are industrializing on the continent. And we are doing very well. The African Export-Import Bank, which is headquartered in Cairo, has just teamed up with the Secretariat for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and intra-continental transactions are now conducted through local currencies, no longer through the US dollar. This is saving the continent $5 billion in 1 year. So if you buy anything from Nigeria, you use rent, and then you save on those transactions. And this is funded by the Africa Export-Import Bank. So we are doing very well as a continent. And the agreement also came up with 3 groups: developed, you are South African, then developed within the context of Africa, developing, and there's the bottom 5. These are the least developed in terms of their industrialization output. And these are Ethiopia, Djibouti, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique. We call them the bottom 5. We are giving them 15 years to operationalize the agreement. Thank you.
You know, if I didn't do that, Saul would have gone over and over again. Yeah. Because he's such
Come back to your seat.
he's got such a passionate history, because I mean he's able to articulate a lot of issues. So in future I'll be in your history class.
You must do podcasts.
Sorry, Chair, I just want to find out what kind of funding that is available for all those kind of treaties that you have signed, and this memorandum that are there, in making it a point that the industries that wants to enter, so that they can have an opportunity to kind of engage. If ever then there's no funding, then it becomes that kind of a historical storytelling.
The African Development Bank has availed huge resources. The African Export-Import Bank has availed huge resources. In fact, the African Export Bank has even, 2 months ago, they opened their branch here in partnership with ECIC, GTI, Export Credit Insurance and what corporation, ECIC, these agents of DTI. So they have here, but Sisa will kill me because he wants us to nurse our government. But ultimately, access to all these resources depends on your country's ability to access these resources, to make them available to entrepreneurs like yourself. But comfortably, I can say that the Reserve Bank is on board. Lusisa kill me, but South Africa still doesn't have a national strategy on the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. He's running this project from the ruling party side. And once he has finalized it, then DTI will buy into it. But we are running behind as a country compared to other African countries. And this morning I said to him, I'm an independent, I'll just say it bluntly, and as a veteran, keep nicely. Yeah, in such a
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Order, Chair.
You said yes instead of no.
You want a response or?
No, I was joking, but the thing is, I withdrew that, but as I was driving here, I felt I should have defied my leader. Because SALGA, the South African Local Government Association, in March this year, they had a workshop on the free trade initiative itself. Now, sometimes you must be careful because there are 3 spheres of government. So SALGA does it on its own. And the last resolution they have, let alone the fact that they say they are going to go to companies. So, uMasipala Semtata, Wasebai, Cape Town, Musina, will go to businesses within the municipality and engage on intra-African trade under the AfCFTA banner. Outside, but linked obviously, DTI and provincial government, because it's a sphere of government which can do that on their own.
On its own.
The last point, sorry to take your time, they say the second dialogue following the one they had in March, there must be a reporting on progress, which is very fundamental. When a structure say, don't come back for a talk show, your municipalities must tell us, what have you done about the resolutions of the first dialogue? Thanks for provoking me to share that, because I am also very critical of the foot dragging that's done by the national government, particularly through the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition.
Absolutely.
However, here is an interesting thing that local government sees an opportunity in the free trade initiative.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
Thank you very much.
And the first Secretary General happens to be a South African.
Dr. Mlobi, we're running out of time. Let's wrap up. We've got Lerato Pretorius in our midst. Sorry,
Lerato Maku. Lerato Pretorius isn't here.
Okay, Lerato Maku.
Yeah.
Okay, she's an administrator of Future Africa International. Ma'am, the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Thank you for giving me this platform. As Future Africa International, we are elated about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and it brings us much pleasure to participate in its implementation as a non-profit company. that fosters African youth leadership, development, entrepreneurship, and climate action. You will agree with us that it's difficult to imagine how this sublime vision can be successfully implemented without harnessing our strength as youth, as a youthful continent. It is therefore imperative that we deliberately and consistently inspire, influence, and arm the youth with the requisite skills that will enable our African economies to tap into a pool of opportunities tied to this initiative. Our vision as an organization is to be the leading international youth-oriented non-profit company that orchestrates the molding of generation of young Africans that are ardent climate action champions, competent entrepreneurs, and outstanding leaders. This fits perfectly with the agenda of the free trade. According to the World Bank, the African Continental Free Trade Area presents a major opportunity to African countries to bring 30 million people out of extreme poverty and to raise the income of 68 million others who live on less than 5.50 per day in dollars. With the implementation of the African trade facilitation measures that cut red tapes and simplify custom procedures will drive 292 billion of the 450 billion in potential income gains. Implementing the African trade would help us usher in the kinds of deep reforms necessary to enhance a long-term growth in the African countries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Lerato, for that insight. Which what I've picked up from what you were saying in the main is the need for deep reform, and the extent to which the deep reform, whether in a space of financial institutions, whether in a space of infrastructure, whether in a space of IT, once those reforms are in place, it is only way in which opportunities available through trade can be taken advantage of. So we still have a long way to go. 2 years into this thing, there are obviously low-hanging fruits that we can begin to celebrate. However, we still got a long way to go. I mean, Saul alluded to ratification process and adoption processes. Some countries have nearly to submit their instrument, which means they still need to institutionalize this instrument.
Yes.
Sarah? Yep.
Sorry, sir, but we need to understand that the youth should be at the forefront.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's the biggest mistake that we're doing. But that's a debate for another day. But it is common cause that we can't have a youthful continent, and those who are supposed to be on the forefront are in the periphery. And it is these kind of conversations that needs to happen. And again, I'll go back to the role of the media and how to communicate and advocate these strategic issues, because without those big voices, we are unable to rattle the ship. The more we have a robust media to take the so-called old guards head on, the more likely we can fast-track the implementation process, because youth by their nature are very energetic. We've got a minister of energy in this country who does not display any form of energy. I beg your pardon, but be that as it may. Yeah. All right. We now have, Prasad, we have changed the... are we now...
Maybe Masingita briefly about normal, then quick vote of thanks from students.
Yes, please.
Hello, I'm a typical speaker, so I will stand. You spoke of energy. I feel like there's no energy. And on an energetic note, we're talking brand. Brand is about presentation, it's about looks. Whether you like it or not, how you package yourself will ultimately determine whether people believe in your brand or not. So it's interesting that we're talking branding, but in a low pitch. That we are ashamed of what we are talking about. Let me be quick. I'll speak of above normal, not from an advertising, but from an African brand perspective. Let me rough some feathers. How many of you own Batu? Batu the shoe. One person. Okay. How many of you own Sonabilis? Shirts. Not shirts, but fashion designs.
Yes.
How many of you? How many of you own Loxin Culture? Two. What are we doing here? What are we here for? Because it is said Africa is the richest continent, but Africans are the poorest people. And I've just shown you why. I have to articulate why. Oh, did you get why? We don't believe in our own brands, but we speak in brand Africa. So we're talking the talk, but we're not walking the walk. But yet we expect somebody else to walk, to believe in our own brands. If you can't eat your own food, I think it's poisoned. You can't sell me food that you can't eat yourself. Why are you not eating it? What is about normal? We are the premier African sports and fitness brand. We change the gear. We believe that performance depends on how much you believe in yourself. It is a proven fact that people who believe in themselves, they perform much better than those who don't believe in themselves. So that's why as a sports and fitness brand, we believe that if Bafana can change the gear to above normal, they'll start performing. We've got different products. We've got apparel, we've got gyms, we will be launching our executive fitness and presidential fitness. So I already have clients here. And then we've just launched our steel and alkaline water, which you can order now for your companies and your household. Alkaline is good for your health. But let me close it from on a high note or on an above normal note. 4 years ago, when I turned 40, yes, 4 years ago, when I turned 40,
The makeup is fooling us.
I don't have makeup. I don't even have makeup on. Yeah. And I believe that beauty and brains go together.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty successful. What I wanted to do, as in, African women was to go to the highest point of Africa, summit Kilimanjaro. And I want to close on lessons, leadership lessons I learned from climbing Kilimanjaro. When I wanted to go, I did 2 things for my 40 years. Summited, not only climbed, but I
Lovely.
summited.
Congratulations.
And then I drove from Cape to Cairo. But, yeah, it was about Africa. When I was about to climb, I needed somebody who can help me climb. I approached Spusiso Villan. The reason being, Spusiso is the first black man to climb to summit Everest. Spusiso is the one who takes the platform Mandela crew every year. So one thing I knew about him was he will never compromise his reputation because he feels sorry for me. I do that all the time. I approach people who, when I say, can we do this or that, they will not compromise on reputation. And if we do that as Africans, we put excellence first.
Exactly.
To say it's not about our feelings, it's about being excellent and performance. Number 1. He agreed. He said, I'll take you there. Number 2 lesson I learned from climbing Kilimanjaro. The higher you go, the more you need other people.
Yes.
You can never summit high peaks on your own. You need a team. Actually, it's 4 to 1. When you summit Kilimanjaro, and it's so expensive because you need a team that will cook, that you need a chef, you need somebody to carry your bags, you need somebody to be assisting. You know why? Because you need all the energy when you are summiting. So you can't be carrying things. And you only need the energy at the end. So when they say to you, pole, no taste, you don't understand. They're saying, conserve your energy for when it matters. Don't waste energy on things that don't matter, because they will come a time when you need that energy. To conquer giants, you need energy. And as African leaders, because of the level we operate in, sometimes we cannot reach certain things, but we've wasted that energy on things that don't matter. So when we have to on the above ground, we don't have the energy for that. And we feel sorry for ourselves. As they said, your attitude determines your altitude. It's not about whether you do it. I've got a physical disability. I could summit where most people couldn't, because you get to a point where your energy is depleted, and only here. This is where now this takes over. It's not about your physical fitness, but your mind. And that's what has killed African brands. We don't think much of ourselves. The last and most important lesson, Moses says to me, when we are about to start our night last night to summit, he says, after fighting me and him for fashion, because I had this dress that I wanted to summit in. I mean, it was going to be the most important, moment of my life. I wanted to dress for it. And he's like, no, you can't. It's cold. And it's one of the reasons that made me decide to have a sports brand. I mean, really, why must I submit being ugly? I mean, after that conversation, he won, of course. He says to me, Masilita, when we submit, you must understand one thing. There's only a limited window of opportunity that allows you to submit. Once you miss it, you've missed it. You can be there, but all your training would have gone to waste once you miss that window of opportunity. So here it is. Let's be practical now. You are slow, sophisticated. And if I didn't believe that you can do it, I wouldn't have agreed. But it will take certain things for you to be able to get that window of opportunity. We usually, yes, I'm closing. We usually take leave here around 11 or 12. But because you are slow, we have to leave here around 9 or 10. What Professor was saying to me was, you are slow because you have a disability. Is it fair? It's not fair. However, life is not about what happened to you. The sun will rise whether you're slow or not slow. The sun will do what it's supposed to do. It's unfair. So the situation may not be unfair, may not be fair, it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. As Africans, we feel so much sorry for ourselves. We keep on blaming the system. It's unfair. But complaining and not doing anything about it won't get us anywhere. We've got a responsibility to say, what is it that I have to do extra with my disadvantages that will make me to catch that window of opportunity? Because at the end of the day, people are not interested in my circumstances. They're interested in whether I've got a quality product or not. So we cannot keep on having excuses about our situation. If they are what they are, it's up to us as Africans to believe in ourselves, to create our own resources, circulate, and then we will produce high quality product that will make Brand Africa shine. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. How amazing is that, Masingita? We're quite pleased to have wrapped up the conference pretty much. Two things for me that I picked up is the whole issue of leadership and the importance of leadership that displays emotional maturity, because it's only through emotional maturity you can decipher trees from the forest. One, understanding your own context or your environment, it makes you appreciate, those windows of opportunities, and making the best of your limited resources. And it's not about getting more. It's about doing more with less. Okay, if we could get that mentality, we could do more with less as Africans. Okay, and believing in our own products, believing in our own brands. I mean, you make very interesting observation that half of us here aren't wearing or buying or procuring, items that have been done by Africans, and it's all excuses coming to think of it. Because even if you buy a car, I mean, I made a decision a long time ago. When I walk into a dealership, I look for Africans because I know through commission they're able to get something, And you always have to, you make that conscious decision that I want this thing to go to circulate within this particular community. It's not, but if you don't make that conscious decision about where you buy, who you buy it from, why you buy it from there, we're not going anywhere. So we've learned a lot from thanks for instilling that level of confidence. Thanks for elevating the consciousness, which we all need as Africans, beyond this particular room. I'm sure we'll take this conversation and this messaging to our own respective place. Don't feel foolish for yourself. There's only one window of opportunity. And if you miss it, everything is down the drain. So what is it? How do you preserve our energies to summit? That's how I conclude based on what you just said. Anyway, last but not least, we'll have Stephen Mohapo, who is the representative of Brandhill Africa, to give us a closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I feel very much intimidated to speak after Masengita, but I'm happy I'm not the speaker. I'm just doing an easy job of closing the session. As you have mentioned, my name is Stephen Mkhalapa, the CEO for Brandhill Africa Institute, which is a subsidiary of Brandhill Africa Group. Let me first start with this provocative question, borrowing from Masingita. How many of us in here, without Honorable Njikelana, knows that there is an African Union national anthem? Wow, that's good. I came late. We sing it when we started with the program.
It's in our hearts.
Then what are we saying about us, about being pragmatic Pan-Africans? I think those are the things that we need to start with. I attended one conference 2 months ago. It was about pragmatic African solutions. It was run by Mabungu Institute. And I asked the similar question, that how many knows that we've got an African Union anthem, and why is it not integrated into our own national anthems? Because if we're talking African, then we got to walk the talk. Why do we enjoy John Walker rather than enjoying Three Ships? So we got to walk the talk. So thank you, Masingita, for that inspiring talk. I think that was quite very much significant. I think on behalf of Brandhill Africa, we would like to thank our partners, which is the African Business Council, the African Tourism Board, the Lavo Wines, SYC, and the Empire Partner Foundation. Thank you very much for sponsoring our 3rd annual Biashara Products and Services. Let me also boldly say that we are thankful that we have partnered with the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So we are walking the talk in as far as being a proudly South African company. We have partnered with the AfCFTA. In fact, we ran a webinar for them officially. So we are proud to be walking the talk from that front. I would like to thank our group chairman, Dr. Solomon Mulobi, my good friend. I would like to thank that the Honorable Caesar Jigenana. He asked me, why are you calling me honorable? I said, you know what, this title of being honorable, it remains with you when you did honorable things. So I've sat in Parliament with Honorable Jikelana, and we were sitting on the opposite side of the bench. But one thing I can tell you about him, he was standing on the principle. I'm assuming he should have been one of those who was disciplined. He could have been a disciplined comrade and stood up and did the right thing. So I call you honorable for that reason, because of I know the work that Parliament does. Most of the people see Parliament in the theatrics, they don't know the work behind the work that is done behind Parliament. So thank you very much, the esteemed speakers who have made the speeches here. Thank you very much for your contribution. It was quite very much enlightening. And to our esteemed Master of Ceremony, thank you very much, Dr. Mbele. Thank you for being our partner. You've always been with us when we are hosting such events. Thank you for keeping us to time as well, and for making sure that it's run orderly. We are forever grateful for your partnership and for working with us. Masingita, my dear sister, you are always with us, you are part of us, and we are proud always to showcase you, and you never disappoint. And I think you can inspire most of us and all of us. There's no excuse for ourselves. When we talk about pragmatic Africa, we got to rise for ourselves. There is this, again, I attended this workshop. There were 3 powerhouses in one room, which is always unusual. We had the EU, China, and the USA. And China was saying, no, we are for partnership collaboration with Africa. The EU said, no, we want the traditional rule of law, democracy, green energy and everything. And Americans came and said, no, we are for agency. We are saying, Africa, you are on your own. Just negotiate better deals for yourself. So it goes on your theme of saying we mustn't feel sorry for ourselves as Africans. We just got to carry the baton and move on. So we would like to thank you, the participant, both online and as well as physical who has been there. And on that spirit of the festive season, we wish you joyous Christmas and happy prosperous New Year, and we convene again next year in the 4th annual Biashara, and we hope that the networking that will come here, because of AfCFTA, won't happen by ratification of governments. Governments can only do so much, but business and private sector and us as individuals within the African continent, we need to make it work. It's about facilitation of intra-Africa business. It's not done by heads of states, nor by departments. It's done by business people. So we got to walk the talk, and we are grateful to our African ambassadors who were here, and as well as the ones who spoke, because of it's about being pragmatic Pan-Africanism. So on behalf of Brandhill Africa, we wish you a merry festive season, and may God bless you. We'll see each other next year. Thank you very much.
Colleagues,